Hi, I'm Danny Duchamp. Welcome to my shitty Honda Fit. So, with Trump's inauguration just having happened today, I think we should all take a look at the real way we all know he managed to get there. This is the document the CIA released, which proved, once and for all, that Russia hacked the DNC and provided documents to WikiLeaks in order to sabotage Hillary Clinton's bid at the presidency. Wait. Oh, sorry, this is actually the 2003 CIA document proving once and for all that Iraq was developing WMDs. Oops. Easy mistake to make though, right? Imagine having a conversation in 2003 about America invading Iraq. At the time, that report, and all of the evidence that the CIA claimed to have, had not been released to the public. But enormous numbers of people just believed what the CIA said, because if they claimed that Iraq was developing WMDs, they must have good reason to do so. Obviously forgetting the CIA lying to Congress 2 years ago, covering up the secret detention sites and torture programs, and at least as far back as 1977, where they lied to Congress about their involvement in aiding brutal dictator Augusto Pinochet's helicopter-fueled takeover of Chile, and many a time between. I don't know about you, but if I was politically active during the whole Iraq WMD debacle, I would feel like I was taking crazy pills. How could everyone suddenly believe that the CIA, that proven pack of liars, was trustworthy enough for the US to take aggressive action against a foreign nation on their word alone? And we pretty much always are expected to take things on their word alone. They couldn't release the details of the evidence that Iraq had a WMD program. They claimed to have it, so you could just trust them. But as we all know, it turned out that Iraq was not developing WMDs, and the, evidence was a confession from a guy who they tortured, Inquisition style, until he confessed. I'm not coming out here saying that I don't think torture can ever be effective. But if you're torturing a guy, and the only out you give him is telling you what you want to hear, he's going to tell you what you want to hear. Oh well. At least since then we've learned, right? At least now, no one would just take whatever the CIA says at their word without requiring any evidence for it, right? Keep in mind that since then, we've had the Snowden leaks revealing that government agencies have been, and still are, spying on their own citizens. This involved not only the CIA, but also the NSA and many intelligence agencies from around the world. And remember, this is something that the US intelligence officials had repeatedly denied they were doing. But apparently we still haven't had enough. Because right now, as I record this, with the new US president just taking office, a significant number of people believe that he's only there because of spooky Russian hackers. In case you've been living under a rock, back during the Democratic primaries, there were some leaked emails from the Democratic National Convention that were published by WikiLeaks. And among other things, the emails showed the DNC colluding with Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders during said primaries. This was one of the big Hillary Clinton scandals that helped ensure her defeat at the general election. The claim was that those emails were originally supplied to WikiLeaks by hackers from the Russian intelligence agencies. Who claims this? The CIA, of course. And what evidence have they given? Nothing. Whenever I express my frustration at the fact that we're supposed to accept this with no evidence, I get a response that amounts to, the intelligence agencies don't need to give the public evidence. And, in case anyone thinks it's just the people I talk to saying this shit, there's a fucking Washington Post article right here making the same plea for the public to just trust these bands of proven serial liars on matters of national security. And it's not just a national security issue digitally. The Obama administration has placed retaliatory sanctions on Russia for their alleged hacking. That is insane. It is aggressive action against a major world power. It's probably not going to instantly kick off World War III, but poking the bear is at the very least mind-bendingly irresponsible. So if you're going to do it, might I suggest maybe having a single scrap of fucking evidence for your allegations first? By the way, side note for anyone who wants to bring up the CrowdStrike evidence, if some malware on a DNC computer that uses standard phishing techniques is evidence of Russian hacking, then the computer you are watching this on was probably hacked by the Russian government too. CrowdStrike link below, along with a link to the report from the FBI and DHS which relied on the same bullshit. Americans, you are being expected to support your government's reckless actions based on nothing but the CIA's say-so. Is this acceptable to you? If you're going to go on someone's say-so alone, how about WikiLeaks themselves? who would actually know who provided them with the emails, and, as far as we know, has a 100% perfect record in verifying and honestly releasing information. And they claim outright that their source was not the Russian government. But you know what? We shouldn't even take WikiLeaks' word for this. We should apply the skepticism that an important issue like this requires, and withhold judgment and sanctions until the evidence can be assessed one way or the other. Because after all, is there any conceivable way to further abandon any pretense of intellectual honesty than to say, I have no evidence for this, and yet I believe it? Now, I understand that the argument is that we need to just trust our national security agencies because it is a national security risk to publicly reveal all of this information. And that is arguably a conundrum. I would personally say it's an unsolvable one, and if they want to be believed, they're just going to have to release all that information anyway. But even if you think that trusting an agency to work with that level of secrecy is necessary, then surely it at least requires that they have an impeccable level of trustworthiness, not an abhorrent history of lying. But, of course, the CIA is now saying something which is politically advantageous to a whole lot of people, and suddenly they're a bastion of truth and honesty. And we don't need a scrap of evidence for anything they say. I mean, if they were being skeptical, they'd also realize that even if their claim was true, it doesn't really threaten the legitimacy of Trump's presidency. Nobody's saying the leaks were fabricated, just that it's unethical of Russia to release private US information, even if it's important for the American people to know it. In other news, Obama commuted the sentence of whistleblower Chelsea Manning, because while she did release private US information, that's okay, because it's important for the American people to know it. This treatment of CIA claims and secrecy is so goddamn partisan. When they're seen as politically advantageous to the left is totally willing to just trust the government and the right isn't. As is the case with this latest example. And when it's seen as politically advantageous to the right is totally willing to trust the government and the left isn't. As is the case with the Iraq example. It's not even just restricted to the CIA or even to American intelligence agencies, as is the case with the Snowden leaks example. As I said at the beginning, Trump is now in office in America, and I want everyone who supported him to remember what bullshit the intelligence agencies were spinning about him as he took office. And when there's some claim they make in the future, which seems to fit your political agenda, don't just throw away all skepticism. It's the most basic, conceivable requirement for intellectual honesty. Do not believe a claim without evidence. That's all I wanted to say. Out of my shitty Honda fit.